Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is the Raptor, and welcome back to Who'd Win and Why. And this time we've got Mr. Fantastic, smartest man alive and leader of the Fantastic Four, going up against Plastic Man, the criminal turned elastic do-gooder of the Justice League. They may have very different personalities and backstories, but these guys are some of the best when it comes to the power of elasticity. And today it's time for me to decide who I think would win in the showdown of the superhero stretchers. So, who'd win and why? Let's find out! Alright, so first we're going to talk about Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards started out as a brilliant scientist, quite possibly the most brilliant the world had ever seen, and he was developing some truly amazing technology. He was extremely knowledgeable as a scientist, but what he didn't know was that his life was going to get a lot crazier. While on a trip that was taking him to beyond the moon, alongside Susan Storm, Johnny Storm, and his best friend Ben Grimm, they all got hit with a cosmic ray storm, which resulted in them acquiring various strange superpowers. Reed was given elasticity abilities that allowed him to stretch incredible distances and change his shape at will, and he thought that he and his friends should use their new powers to help people. They created the superhero team known as the Fantastic Four, and Reed Richards became their noble leader while donning the title of Mr. Fantastic. Obviously, Mr. Fantastic is known for being able to stretch his body to amazing lengths. He does this by turning his entire body into a far more malleable state than his normal human state, and this allows him to stretch up to 1,500 feet long before he starts feeling significant pain. He can use stretching to catch up to opponents or to fully wrap himself around them, but his powers really shine in the shape-changing department. Reed has shown dozens of useful ways he can stretch and shape his body, including shape-shifting into people that look somewhat similar to him, gliding like a parachute, bouncing like a trampoline, becoming nearly two-dimensional, opening locks by changing his fingers into key shapes, becoming a slingshot, becoming relatively small geometric shapes, and way more. This is basically limited only by his brilliant imagination, though his stretching does have clear limits, and the more stretching or morphing he does at any given time, the weaker his overall body becomes. With that being said though, Mr. Fantastic actually has a number of ways he can increase his physical levels, including strength. He's often used his shape-changing to create giant fists or even other weapons out of his hands to increase his striking power immensely, and he can shape-change his whole body to add even more muscle mass and increase his overall build. In addition, Reed can morph himself into balls, springs, and other bouncy objects in order to move faster, and is able to stretch to his destination considerably quickly, not to mention that he's reacted to very fast attacks from alien creatures such as Annihilus. But where he really shines is in his crazy durability that results from his malleability, and this makes him nearly impervious to many different physical attacks. He's taken hits from the Thing, Blastar, Malice, and can survive getting hit with a bolt of electricity and containing explosions, though he does become exhausted if he has to contain a blast worth around 12 pounds of TNT. On top of all of that, he can make his skin so stretchy that he can redirect certain projectiles, with almost no negative repercussions on his own body. Reed Richards' brilliant mind was only made better after getting hit with the cosmic storm, and he's become extremely accomplished over the course of his life. He's mastered all aspects of chemistry, physics, biology, and mechanical, electrical, and aerospace engineering, and he's made amazing breakthroughs in all of these fields and many, many more. He even knows how to navigate through other dimensions, something barely anyone on Earth knows how to do, and he's extremely knowledgeable about many forms of alien life. He's built countless machines during his scientist and superhero careers, including a universal translator, a paralysis ray, a gamma gun, and the infamous Fantastic Car. And while he doesn't usually have these inventions on hand, it just goes to show how incredible his genius really is. He also developed the Fantastic Suit, something every Fantastic Four member wears in a battle, which is made of unstable molecules to accommodate the wearer's powers and has a computer system that checks on the wearer's current physical condition and can detect things in his near vicinity, among other things. Reed is also competently knowledgeable of pressure points and hypnosis. Mr. Fantastic is certainly an incredible scientist and hero, but he's not perfect. He does sometimes make mistakes with his calculations, and he's definitely not much of a fighter at heart, much more of a pacifist. Additionally, he does possess a couple of rather severe weaknesses, most notably extreme cold. Despite his flaws, however, there's no denying that heroes don't come much smarter and dedicated than Reed Richards himself. He may not always want to fight, but he'll be there for his team and for the world when he's needed, and he'll be sure to do it in his own fantastic fashion. Alright, so now it's time to move over to Plastic Man. Patrick O'Brien actually started as a thief and criminal, operating under the name of the Eel. He likely would have spent a very long time in these shoes if it hadn't been for one critical police chase. While running away from the cops, one of them accidentally shot a chemical can while trying to hit Patrick, and the chemicals came into contact with him, altering the physical makeup of his entire body. He became inhumanly malleable and could change his shape into nearly anything imaginable just by stretching, and this new development led to his criminal gang rejecting him. However, thanks to a former Arkham inmate, he decided to change from bad to good and adopted the name Elastic Man. That is, until the press declared his name to be Plastic Man after a miscommunication. He quickly got a better hold of his powers and even joined the Justice League, recreating himself as a real, distinguished superhero. Plastic Man is one of the few characters in the DC universe who has full control over every single molecule in his body, and this gives him his phenomenal stretching and shape-changing abilities. He can stretch any or all parts of his body to extraordinary lengths with no defined limit, and he can change his shape to practically anything he can conjure up in his imagination. He can become flatter than a sheet of paper to slip through the tightest of spaces, shape all or parts of his body into any shape or precise configuration, change his appearance to anyone or anything he can think of, real or not, and he can even change color with enough concentration. Arguably most impressively, however, he has the same amount of control over his body mass, body density, and physical constitution, and this lets him do some crazy things to his physical capabilities. Plastic Man has used his shape-changing powers numerous times to add more muscle to his body, and thus making him far stronger than a normal human. And again, there doesn't seem to be a set limit for how much he can amp this up thanks to his molecular control, and his strength can range from being able to catch a falling Batman to being able to tangle with Black Manta and even Furnace, a sub-identity of the Martian Manhunter. He can also increase his strength by growing in size, and he can shrink incredibly small to more easily avoid attacks. However, dodging incoming assaults isn't really something Plastic Man has to worry about, considering that his body is completely invulnerable to almost all physical attacks, and he has easily withstood gunfire, explosions, and even attacks from Planetary Plus level characters. His organs are also just as malleable as his skin is, increasing his survivability level, and he's able to molecularly heal himself if he somehow is damaged physically. He can also increase his speed level by changing his molecular structure or shape to move in creative ways. Plastic Man is more than just a guy that knows how to change his shape. Of course, calling back to his old criminal days, Patrick is a master thief and knows numerous infiltration techniques, and he's actually been able to use this knowledge to get into the mindset of other criminals and in turn become a fine detective. He's certainly not a genius by any standards, but he's still a pretty smart guy as far as this kind of thinking is concerned. But what's even more impressive regarding his mind is that he's supposedly completely immune to all forms of mind control according to Batman, which is likely due to how his brain and other organs are rubberized and entirely under his control. He also doesn't seem to age after acquiring his powers, again likely for similar reasons. Lastly, Plastic Man can always be seen wearing his signature suit and goggles while on the battlefield, which can act exactly like him, meaning that they don't limit his stretching or shape-changing abilities in the slightest. While Plastic Man's abilities have let him pull off extraordinary things, he's known to not always take his work extremely seriously, and he can act very silly even when the situation becomes more and more pressing. On top of that, Plastic Man can definitely be incapacitated by using the right tools against him, and he seems to be quite vulnerable to extreme temperatures and certain chemical reactions. But aside from that, Plastic Man has some crazy abilities up his stretchy sleeves and knows how to use them in the best ways. He can be cocky and reckless, but he's still got a heart of gold, and when he gets serious, he's an unpredictable opponent that you do not want to mess with. Alright, so now that I've gone over both of these characters, it's finally time for me to say who I think would win this battle. And at first glance, this fight really does look like it could go either way, as they've demonstrated a lot of the same basic elastic abilities. Without looking into the characters' powers and experiences too deeply, it can definitely be a hard one to judge. However, after looking further into their capabilities, I do personally believe that Plastic Man would be the winner of this fight. And if you think that Mr. Fantastic would win, that's great, that's totally fine, let me know why down in the comments below, but first, here's my reasoning for why I think Plastic Man would win more often than not. First, let's get something out of the way that absolutely needs to be said. Yes, Mr. Fantastic obviously has the intelligence advantage. He's consistently been regarded as the smartest human being on Earth, and his IQ rests at around the 267 mark. This is light years beyond Plastic Man's level of intellect, as he's definitely no smartest man alive despite still being a competent detective. Also, it's worth noting that Reed has slightly better training in terms of hand-to-hand combat and pressure point knowledge, and and they've both been able to show off amazing use of their stretchy abilities, including physical augmentation and shape changing. Unfortunately for Mr. Fantastic, however, just because these two are even in one area of elasticity doesn't mean that they're completely matched, and Plastic Man's powers are simply on another level in terms of, well, basically everything. This is mostly chalked up to the fact that Plastic Man has complete control over every molecule in his body, which is an extremely big deal in the DC universe. Both Mr. Fantastic and Plastic Man have shown that they can increase their strength, speed, and durability by using their powers correctly, but Plastic Man doesn't have the same kinds of limits that Mr. Fantastic does, and is able to increase his capabilities to unimaginable degrees. His molecular control allows him to survive practically any physical assault, and he can increase his strength enough to be able to hold his own against Furnace and Shazam, not to mention that his organs are also invulnerable and that he can move them around in his body if he really needs to. Reed, on the other hand, despite being tough in his own right, has never shown off these kinds of feats, and because he can't control every molecule in his body, he has much harder limits and is much more vulnerable against extreme physical assaults. If he gets exhausted after containing an explosion worth only 12 pounds of TNT, he definitely doesn't have the same physical resistances that Plastic Man does, and his other durability feats look like child's play in comparison. On top of that, Plastic Man seems to be able to amp up his shape-changing and stretching abilities much further as well, as he doesn't have a stretching limit like Mr. Fantastic does, and he can even change the density of his body, becoming basically as fast or as sturdy as he wants. He can alter his size to greater degrees, he can regenerate faster, he can change color. I could honestly keep going. In short, Plastic Man's full molecular control gives him more control over his power set than Mr. Fantastic has ever shown, and this in turn gives him way better physical capabilities and versatility. Of course, though, the big question that this really comes down to is whether or not Mr. Fantastic would be able to beat Plastic Man simply by outsmarting him. And while Reed might be able to catch him off guard using his intellect, he doesn't have the best means to come out on top or even just capitalize on Plastic Man's weaknesses. Mr. Fantastic can come up with great strategies that have been used to take down incredible villains, but he's usually only able to execute these plans properly when the rest of the Fantastic Four are by his side, and he needs them to provide a lot of the heavy lifting. Don't get me wrong, Reed has a lot of good feats of his own, but his amazing game-winning strategies are usually only possible thanks to his team's help. When he's just by himself and left to his own devices, keep in mind he wouldn't be carrying any tech he's invented in a random encounter with no prep time, he doesn't have nearly as many options for strategizing and can't provide the same oomph when it comes to power and execution. On top of that, without any sort of special technology or equipment, Mr. Fantastic simply has no way to take advantage of Plastic Man's weaknesses to chemicals and extreme temperatures, which wouldn't be able to permanently stop him anyway, so he really doesn't have any way of putting him down. Whereas Plastic Man doesn't really need to exploit a weakness in order to kill him when he can just increase his power output to whatever level he needs to. It might be tough for Plastic Man, but it's still far more likely for him to kill Reed than the other way around. Overall, both of these characters are incredibly versatile and have a great deal of experience, but Plastic Man simply has a more over-the-top set of elasticity powers that make him much more deadly and unpredictable. Mr. Fantastic doesn't really have anything at his disposal that could kill Plastic Man, and even if he could use his extra tech, it wouldn't be able to slow him down for too long. Reed is obviously incredibly smart, but it's not a stretch to say that Plastic Man's superior molecular control, leading to superior strength, speed, durability, stamina, and versatility, would prove too much for Reed to handle. So, in my opinion, the winner is Plastic Man. So guys, thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give this video a huge like. I always appreciate the likes. You can leave in the comments down below what you thought of the video, who you think would win, anything like that. And if you guys could subscribe to my channel, that'd be so great. That would really help my channel out. But no matter what you guys do, your view is plenty of contribution. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And next time on Who, When, and Why, we've got Shrek going up against Sully. See you all then.